Here's a good one from Alice Miller. According to prehistorians, humans coexisted peacefully for 5 million years. Had this not been the case, they would have been unable to survive for that long. There's a whole thing, a book called Mutual Aid, written by a famous anarchist, that talks about, in capitalism they try to tell you dog eat dog world, survival of the fittest, the most prime, biggest, and most assertive specimen will propagate, and it continues. Well, it's actually mutual aid. The one who can actually help the group and be helped by the group, those are the ones that survive. People by themselves as a single pure, thoroughbred specimen, they're not the ones that tell whether a species survives. Meaning we're more geared towards sociability and openness with each other instead of these repressions and shadowy parts that we were we were falsely made by our parents to disown and be worried about certain emotions, things that are natural and normal for animals with as much brain as we have other mammals as well. All right, had this not been the case, they would have been unable to survive for that long. Warlike activities are said to have begun only 10,000 years ago, along with the transition in the Neolithic period from gathering and hunting to farming. Since there are no warlike phenomena in nature, and until a relatively short time ago there were none in our history, we are not genetically programmed to withstand mistreatment as children. Animals kill their young if they don't want to care for them, but they don't torture them for years. For millions of years in the course of evolution, we've been programmed to offer loving care and protection to our newborn infants, and nature has equipped our young to receive only positive treatment. We don't have a natural mechanism for coping with mistreatment because we didn't need one. It didn't lend to being reproduced. Nor can we erase it from our bodies, as everything that takes place in our lives remains registered in our cells as information. Nature gives us only the ability to anesthetize ourselves when the mistreatment becomes unbearable. Other animals do that too. If you pin a deer, it might yell, but it's going into this submissive state where it abandons itself in some ways. And so did we when our parents got pissed about dumb stuff. All we know is I'm getting used to whatever they're putting in front of me, and I need to get along to survive because it's wired into us to be sociable. So this kid conforms to the parent and to societal things that may or may not be accurate. This is how generational patterns and trauma are passed down. Our organism protects itself against the threat of death with the help of repression and denial. We forget the beatings and the disdain, or else we maintain that they did us some good, and go on to engage, or at the very least that they're normal, that it was okay, Or even if you railed against it and you knew it was messed up, they still got you very early, and back then you thought that was okay for them to do that. You didn't know any better. You knew better at a certain age, but you didn't before that, and it's still in there. That's your core worldview, is based around these maltreatments and thinking that's okay. So for a little kid, that's when they often say you internalize it and you think you did something wrong. Even if you now know better, you still don't on this more guttural level. And that's why you can outthink these patterns, but deep down in your gut, they still exist because they're just waiting to be released. These are repressions that you had to do for your parents so they would be okay with you. And you held that stuff inside of you. Not to get all hooey hippie, oh, there's energy blockage. No, you internalize this gut altering of just normal reality because they made you do that. And so it's a pattern for you to shy away in different ways. And you're leading an inauthentic life, which saps your creativity, it saps your energy. It's basically putting weight on your shoulders, but in your mind. Our minds consume a lot of calories. The more you're stressing your mind, you're depleting your stuff way more than it's almost as if you were just exercising at the gym nonstop. That's why they say cortisol is like a poison. You can't overtrain at the gym. That's a surefire way to ruin yourself. The protective mechanism used by the child thus becomes fateful for the adult and for our species, for repression leads, out of pure ignorance, to the destruction of our own children and our fellow human beings, and to the acceptance of abuse as a normal way of life. It's the dangerous inattention to the childhood truth stored in ourselves that makes us act destructively, even though we do not really want to do so. We've just been corrupted by these aberrant patterns. During the 1980s, a number of nurses working in psychiatric clinics wrote me that reading my books helped them in their work with their patients, but that they had to hide this fact from their superiors for fear of losing their jobs. Child abuse was at that time still a taboo subject in psychiatry, even though so many patients had an appalling story to tell. Spare the rod, spoil the child. People didn't spend real time with their kids in an open, present way because they had their own patterns from their parents. So when they became parents, they didn't spend present, fully accepting kind of times with their kids. So in lieu of that, they said, I need to punish this kid into doing things the right way. They accidentally corrupted these children with their own stuff that you don't see it. It's just part of your worldview. It's just a natural, normal thing to you. And it's totally inaccurate. It just was accurate for your parent. Child abuse was still taboo. No one wanted to hear it, psychiatrists least of all. At last, even the psychiatric establishment has had to recognize that child abuse and its consequences do indeed exist. Sadly, however, the old blinders have been kept on. Defenses against the whole truth remained almost intact. Statistics and classifications are bandied about. Anything to deny the fact that all patients suffer from the results of injuries to their psychic. In the U.S., for instance, it was known in the 70s that many Holocaust survivors and later Vietnam vets were continuing to suffer from psychic after effects of the traumatic experiences they had repressed years before. Same thing as a soldier has to just carry on. You got to kind of stomach and swallow down what's happening because you got to carry on. You can't just sit there in a field processing it while there's people shooting around you. Well, the same thing to a little kid that depends on their parent to show them normal or what they're going to now think is normal. Well, they need to keep that parent happy, at least while they're still young. The most rebellious person and even kid was still a subservient child to that parent at one point in their life, and that was very early. So that's underneath all the other stuff, all the new things that they think they fully embody. Well, their body fully remembers the earlier stuff. This phenomenon was labeled post-traumatic stress syndrome. When the facts about child abuse became better known in the 80s, a link was made between these patients and adult survivors of child abuse. Then, in the early 90s, all these people were deemed to be suffering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, complex PTSD. They were lumped together in a way that suggested first that people who manifested long-range damage from childhood mistreatment were rare, and second, that their experience was essentially the same as that of people who suffered severe trauma as adults. This association is misleading in two ways. It sidesteps the fact that childhood mistreatment is the primary cause of every kind of psychic disorder, and it implies that the same therapeutic methods can be applied to all trauma victims, regardless of the age at which the injury was sustained. I remember somebody joking about, there was a vet, who said, man, I just wish it could be like back before the trauma, before all this. And then a complex PTSD person said, there was a before, because it happened at such a young age. Many of us still in the womb, we're getting anger and cortisol dumps from fear from the mom and from whatever happens, whatever triggers she goes through while the kid's even in the womb. Okay, peace.